Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Susan Zummo. She is a master teacher of higher consciousness and healing. She is an author. She is a spiritual life guide with over 35 years of experience. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you so much, AJ. I'm so happy to be here.
You are welcome to the show, Susan. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll talk about soul, we'll talk about dreams, we'll talk about healing. So, first, to understand, Susan, I want to understand from you, why do you talk about all these things in this modern world, and how does it matter, about all those things which till some time people thought were not really, important.
Well, and I appreciate that question because I talk about it all the time because I always thought there was something more than just every day. And I work in corporate world. I live in the real world, but I also know that there's a lot more. And my soul and my higher self, God has whispered to me my whole life. When I didn't listen, I got in a lot of trouble. And when I did listen, things worked very well in my everyday life. So I talk about all this because I want everyone's everyday life to improve. I want them to be able to feel the love of their soul, of God, creator source. And I want that to guide their life because it'll make things a lot better than if we ignore it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So as I saw it, we'll be talking about soul, we'll talk about dreams, we'll talk about healing. So let's first talk about soul. You say that intuition is the voice of the soul. And
That's
we need to understand that language, soul's language. So help us understand the soul's language. Normally, we have been told that soul resides in us. It's just within us, and it tries to speak to us. But many a times we either ignore it or we don't understand the language it is talking about. But we also got intuition. Why do we understand intuition about some things, not about the soul's language, what exactly the soul is saying? Help us understand in all this backdrop.
sure thing. That's a really good question. Thank you. The soul is love. The soul is God's love for us. And the soul speaks to us in that language. So if we are unable to feel or hear love for ourselves, it's hard for the soul to get through of us. The soul will answer any question that you have, but you have to ask. And if you ask and have a regular dialogue with your soul, it'll start to give you information before you ask. It's like having a relationship with anybody else in your life. You have to kind of reach out to them and establish a relationship and get to know each other and create a language that the two of you have. Until that happens, your soul will nudge you. It will make you uncomfortable. It will put blessings on your path, and it will talk to you in symbols. And that's where the dream information comes in, because your soul talks to you in your sleep when you're dreaming through symbols. And those symbols can help you get information and guidance, and also that connection to soul and creator source. So intuition is something that everybody needs and everybody should use. And I've used it in business. I've used it in my daily life, not just to get up into the higher energies and hang out with, spirit and feel real good, but for real practical reasons too. So your soul is your closest connection to source, and it is the best information for you that you're ever going to get.
Okay. Okay. So, what is the best way to talk to our soul? And secondly, you talked about dreams, that in
Mhm.
dream symbol. What is if intuition is the language of the soul, then what is the language of dreams? Why does God make things so confusing? Here you talk about intuition, there you talk about symbols. It is almost like, that game children play. They try to find that treasure hunt, and many sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. Why is God making our life so confusing? Help us understand that. Help us understand the dreams and the symbols.
Well, I think we're the ones that make it confusing, not God. Um, Intuition is something that the soul speaks softly. The soul does not speak in a lot of words. It's not going to talk in paragraphs. The soul is very concise and direct. And so when the soul talks to you, you'll hear something like, stop, don't go there, take that. And that's kind of it. When we are not open to hearing the voice of the soul or the intuition, then the soul gets really subtle and starts to send us dream information and dream symbols. So the soul's going to talk to us in many different ways. It just depends on how we want to listen to it. So if we sit every day and say, I'd like to talk to my soul, I'd like to get a message from my soul, I have a question for my soul, and then we're open to the answer. And it doesn't have to be, a voice in the head. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Could be a song, could be a person, could be an article, could be a show like this. And that's how the soul will talk to us if we're open to the answer. Otherwise, the soul is going to come in the dream state and talk to us. But again, it's not going to stand in your dream like a person and go, okay, AJ, listen up, I have something to tell you. It's going to send you a little movie and hope that you're going to pay enough attention to figure out what it means. So the soul's pretty simple and direct. We're just confused and convoluted.
Of course. Let's look at it. You talk about to view events from the soul's perspective with compassion and healing for self and others. How do we look at things from the soul's perspective when we don't understand its language? And then we have to go to the dreams to understand where, because soul speaks softly. We have got so much of pollution, noise pollution. Maybe we are not able to listen to the soul. So we go and God tries to speak to us dreams. But just looking at the soul itself, how can we look at things from the soul's perspective if someone is, say, more aware, and try to understand what is the purpose of this? Help us understand also from the healing part.
Absolutely. And by the way, I love your questions because these are important things to ask and for people to know. To get to the soul perspective, all we have to do is sit and quietly for a moment pull back. So here we're in the weeds all the time, right? We've got our nose here and we're looking at what's going on, and we want to know, why did I lose that job? Why did that person hurt my feelings? Why did I have this thing happen to me? Or how come someone that I love is not evolving? Or how come I'm not evolving the way that I want to? So we're looking at it from one life, the world that we're in right now, kind of, they say, in the weeds, right? The soul's perspective pulls all the way back here and takes a very long view of what's happening. So if we can take our awareness and move it from here all the way back here, we can get a bigger perspective. So when I was in corporate, I applied for a promotion and I was very excited, very prepared. I felt really, really good about it, right? I didn't get the job. And I was very disappointed. And I was kind of ruminating about, why didn't I get this job? And I heard very clearly, you're going to be so happy you didn't get that job. And I couldn't figure out why. And so over the course of time, what I realized was what was attached to the job, what the responsibilities were, what the time commitment was, I would have been very unhappy. So I've learned to take that long perspective. Now, where the healing comes in is that it helped me to move from disappointment and discouragement to a place of peace. In relationships, if we look at the relationships in our lives and we say, well, why isn't this, why isn't this person changing? Why aren't this moving? Why aren't and I progressing the way that I want? Well, if you take the soul's perspective, the soul says, well, this isn't your only life to get that done, honey. It may take in your plan, you planned 56 lifetimes to accomplish this. You're only at lifetime 32. So give yourself a break, right? Give yourself the other person a break. And so now everybody relaxes and says, well, I can stop pushing. I still want to grow. I still want to change, but I can stop judging and pushing and expecting and say, you know what? That person's on their path. And if this is all the progress they make in this life, that's great. And if they make more, that's great too, but they don't have to, because I don't know their plan, but their soul does. Does that help answer it a little bit?
Yes, 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 indeed, indeed, it helps. So let's move on to the dreams again. And you talk about how to make the most of what these dreams bring to us. So tell us about that. And also, along with dreams, come also the nightmares. So, how do we make the most of nightmares too here?
Nightmares.
Help us understand this.
Well, let's talk about nightmares first. Nightmares are our fears that are being played out for us to look at and for us to work through. They can also be past life memories. That's my belief, that we're re-experiencing things that are being touched upon in this life, and they come up to be looked at. When children have nightmares, I like to empower them by telling them, when you have a nightmare, you look at the monster or whatever's going on and you say to that, I am the light and you can't hurt me. And that will help a child clear their nightmares. For adults, it's kind of the same. We have to look at, what is the nightmare triggering in us? What is the overriding fear that we're dealing with, right? It could be a fear of being harmed and feeling insecure. It could be a fear of being cheated or hurt in some way, right? Or feeling unsafe. And so if we understand that, then we can address it in our waking lives and eliminate the nightmare. Dreams, I have been interpreting dreams since I was a little kid. I love it because you can learn everything about a person and about yourself by what they're dreaming about. Because when you're in your dream, you can't have a false facade. You are who you really are in your dream. So we may walk around saying, I'm a kind and loving person. And if someone in your dream comes up and says something to you and you punch them in the dream, well, that tells you something about yourself, because that's your real reaction, right? There's no filter. It's also a way for spiritual teachers, for guides, guardians, your soul, to come in and teach you things. So if you dream you're in a classroom, you're getting higher learning, right? So I always say, look at the dream, look at what's going on, and take it from that perspective and see how it applies. I really don't like dream dictionaries, although my book has a lot of information about symbols. I like for people to understand what that symbol means to them, right? So when I used to take meditation classes, everybody would always say, picture yourself on a lake, a still lake. Now, to me, that's frightening, because I'm thinking I'm going to drown in a lake, and I could never relax. So I kind of don't like general symbols. I always like, well, what makes you feel relaxed? Because it wasn't for me, it was not a lake. So when you're having a dream, your soul knows what things mean to you. And if it wants to convey to you a peaceful setting, it's not going to give me a lake. but it might give you one. So they're very individual, and they're very specific to your own experiences and your background and your beliefs. But if you take a look at what's going on and what they mean, you can find out everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Susan. Let's try and understand more from your book, Mapping the Inner Landscape, Decoding the Symbols of Dreams and Everyday Life. What is this book all about? Who is this book for? What can they get out of this book, so that they can make their life better?
Sure. Actually, the book is a class that I taught for about 10 years. And I got tired of teaching the class. So I thought I'll just write a book and then everybody can have it without having to take the class. So the my belief and the premise of the book is that the universe is talking to us all the time. And first, it will talk to us in life events. It'll talk to us through things that happen in our home, our car, and then our body. So you may have the engine of your car break down. And you say, oh, I have to go get the engine fixed. And then all of a sudden you're having heart issues because the engine is the heart of the car, right? So first the universe is saying, pay attention to your heart. We're gonna hit your house or your car first. So in your house, it might be the heater, right? Or the furnace. So in the book, what we do is we teach people how to read the symbols in their life and also in their dreams. And so if we track house, car, body, excuse me, by the time something happens in your body, you're at the end of the line. Like it's usually happened in other places. So what the dream does is it will teach a method for you to create your own dream dictionary, your own symbol dictionary, to understand life events and what they're trying to tell you, as well as what's going on in your dreams. We also talk about different kinds of dreams that people have. Some people have precognitive dreams where they have a dream and then it happens. I had a lady who dreamt an interview that she had for a job. And when she went the next day, every question that they asked her was in her dream the night before. And she aced that interview. Some of the dreams are about travel that we do, astral travel, where we go to other places, other dimensions, have other experiences. Some of them are where our relatives come to visit us. Some of them are where we work things out. So the book is a teaching, a workbook, information. It just depends on how you want to use it. Some people just pick it up and look up a symbol. Some people work through it. Some people use it as a reference, and some use it as a workbook. It's really individual.
Right, Susan. Wonderful. There is much to understand about these things. One thing I want to understand from you is that that you said universe tries to talk to us. Why does the universe or God or whichever entity we want to name it as uh, takes so much of effort to do all these things by giving us, it always has the hotline. It can always inject a hotline whenever we are born, either through the soul or what is the purpose of all this creation, all the soul dreams, so many different ways of running this life, and to maybe it's all life. God wants it all to be a zero sum equation, something like that, through all these different lifetimes. I want to understand, how do we make sense of it all, which is making, sometimes we may find it difficult, but it is so
Yeah.
organized. The sun will always come up on its time, the moon will come up on its time. We may change our time, but these things will never do that. So how do we find reason behind all this chaos?
Wow, I love that. So it's so simple. It's so simple. God is love. Your soul is a spark of God. It is love. So why are we here and what's it all about? We're here to learn to love one another and to love ourselves. And because God, source, is so infinite, it will use an infinite amount of opportunities and ways to get through to us, that we're here to learn to love. And sometimes to get to love, we have to get rid of fear. We have to release fear. So some of the things that are brought to us are to say, hey, you've got this fear. We want you to work on it and let go of it and love yourself more. So you're absolutely right. It's so simple that people, they don't know what to do with it. They don't believe it. It's got to be more than that. Everything that anybody, any spiritual teacher teaches that are worth their salt are teaching love for self and love for others. That's really all it is.
Right, right. So one last question. Let me try and understand this.
Yeah.
We keep on saying that God created us in His own image. So does God also has fears? Does He also has dreams? Does He also have all the things that we face because we are created in His image? Help us understand. Or is it that He has created in a different format for us so that we can experience everything else? Rest He or she, whatever it is, it is,
Yeah.
we are part of it, but it's a much more sublime.
Well, God did create us in his own image. I believe that God dreamed us into existence and that God had a wonderful dream and created all that we see, all that there is. But God gave us the gift of free will, and free will is what creates fear. So I know that God is experiencing fear through us. And I know that God is answering with love and with compassion. But I feel in my heart that what's inside of me, my connection to God, is just pure love. Everything on top of that is my own making, my own fears, my own creations. And let's face it, some of it is given to us. Some of it is, we're trained as children, all the way up into adulthood. Be afraid of this, watch out for that, don't do this, or something bad will happen. And we do need guidelines, but most of our upbringing is about having fear instilled in us. And I believe that's where free will comes in. The good news is we have the free will to release the fear and move into pure love. My belief is that when we project our fears onto God, that's when you get into a mean God, or a punishing God, or a judging God, because that's not God. That's really us.
Absolutely. There is
So
much to understand. There is much
yeah,
much
and I'm
to
still
understand.
learning.
Right. Absolutely. There is much to understand about, this whole universe, God. And I guess the most we can understand by visiting our inner self. And that is where perhaps everything resides within us. The universe resides within us, God resides within us, and we also perhaps reside within us in the form of our soul. But you are the master. You would be able to, you
Oh,
keep on doing a lot of things, a lot of learning for people. So those people want to learn more from you, about you, and also engage with you as your client, what's the best way for them to do so?
They can go to my website, which is susanzummo.com, and they can visit me on YouTube. I do a weekly message on YouTube to help uplift people. My email is susanzummo@gmail. They can reach out to me in any way they want. Any way they want. But you, sir, you've got it. You summed it all up right there. You're a master teacher yourself.
Thank you for your kind words. But but for today, I only try to get the right answers for so many questions that we all seek answers for, and that's what all our attempt is for.
Yes.
But very thank you very much for answering all the, some of these very difficult questions, because we are all trying to seek answers for these questions which have been, people have been trying to seek answers to
Yes.
for from time immemorial. Thank you so much indeed for all
Thank
your
you.
answers. With
Thank you
this,
for
it's
having
a wrap
me.
on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you once again.
Thank you. God.